Hey guys, Mark from Enchantment of Eternity here. Just thought I'd come on real quick and talk about some news because a lot of news has dropped involving some of my favorite shows and favorite franchises. So I thought it was about time I just give my very quick 2 cents on that. First of all, let's talk about Game of Thrones because I have less to say about this. This news dropped like a week ago or something. I know I'm a bit late to this in this regard, but they have announced that HBO has commissioned a pilot for a new spin-off series. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the show is definitely going to happen. They're just filming a pilot, so the pilot is the test. That's how pilots work. But I'm pretty confident that any pilot with this much sort of effort put into it will be picked up. So I'm pretty sure it's a done deal myself, even though we don't know that for sure. But the news has come out that it's about the Age of Heroes, which also implies it's about the Long Night. I think a lot of people were talking about George R. R. Martin had worked closely with the writer. I believe this is the writer. They mentioned a lot of films that she did, but I believe she's the one that worked on The Leftovers. So that's what I know of her because I love The Leftovers. So they're making a spin-off Game of Thrones show about the Age of Heroes, and I've heard a lot of various opinions. People are like, "Yeah, why do I care?" Me personally, I am really excited about this. It sounds like a great idea, an awesome idea. Because we know so little about this time period, and I have a feeling that the ending of this Game of Thrones series may reveal more information about this time period and more information about the White Walkers, and so it seems to me that would be a natural jumping point to go from that to actually getting the backstory. Now, a lot of people are looking at it from the mindset, I guess, who are less familiar with Game of Thrones as like a prequel. Oh, this is prequel-itis, blah, blah, blah. But this is like less like doing The Phantom Menace or like Enterprise or like Solo, and more like a hypothetical situation like if Star Wars actually did a spinoff, which people keep saying it should. Maybe they will with Dan and Dave. But a spinoff of like Knights of the Old Republic or something that happened centuries ago, and it's more equal to that. So I don't see it in the prequel. I don't really look at it in the sense of a prequel, even though it technically is, because it's more of a historical spinoff, which to me is very interesting, and they can take that into many different directions. And I'll be perfectly honest here. I'm actually more interested in this new show than I am in season 8 of Game of Thrones, because I'll do more videos about this shortly, but I am just so disenfranchised with what Dan and Dave did with season 7. I have no hope whatsoever that season 8 will be good. Now, I did a video with Phil the Issues guy, and he said that's actually a good place to be, because then if your expectations are really low, then there's nowhere to go but up. So hopefully that's the case. Hopefully I love season 8, but I have no enthusiasm for it. I have no hope for it. I'm actually not really looking forward to it in the scheme of things. There's a lot of things, movies and films, that I'm looking forward to a lot more, including this Game of Thrones spinoff about the Long Night. We're really looking forward to that. So I hope that would be good. Anyway, now I got the Game of Thrones stuff out of the way, let me jump right into Star Trek, because that was the news that dropped today that prompted me to do this video, and I have a bit more to say about Star Trek. Okay, so a couple days ago, it was announced that the showrunners, I can't recall their names off the top of my head, and I don't have it open, so whatever. But anyway, the showrunners they've worked with Brian Fuller a lot in the past, and they took over for him when he left or was kicked out, however you want to put it, on Star Trek Discovery. They took over as the showrunners. They have been fired a few days ago, and Alex Kurtzman officially has taken over as the showrunner, the sole showrunner of Star Trek Discovery. Now, Kurtzman was involved with Discovery from the beginning, but he was never like the official showrunner. He was more of like a producer involved. I have no idea how much involvement he actually had or didn't have in the show, but now it's official that he is the head honcho, the big cheese. Anyway, so God, I hope you guys can hear me okay, because no one's in the chat speaking up. But anyway, so Alex Kurtzman took over as showrunner for Discovery, and apparently, like those showrunners who were before, were being very verbally abusive to the writing staff, which I find is actually, if you know anything about the history of Next Generation, Maurice Hurley was seen, who was the showrunner for the first 2 seasons of the Star Trek Next Generation, was also seen as being none of the writers liked working with them. They said that he was also very toxic, and said it was a very toxic work environment for the first 2 seasons of Next Generation, and you can see how bad they were and how great the show got once they got in a new showrunner who had a better work environment. So hopefully the same thing will be true here with Discovery, that having a better, more healthy work environment will lead to a better show. But we don't know this for sure. But anyway, they did do the first, like I said, the first 5 or 6 episodes are already in production. So those showrunners whose name I can't remember were involved in those. But Kurtzman is going to take over for the remaining episodes of season 2. They weren't very clear how many there would be, but he would take over after episode 6. So yes, and again. But the news that dropped today was that Alex Kurtzman had signed a deal with CBS, a 5-year deal, the 5-year mission, to oversee not just Discovery, but a launching pad of many potential Star Trek shows. They want to do multiple shows on CBS All Access because they said Discovery was a success for them, brought in a lot of subscription viewers, so they want to do more Star Trek shows. Now, let me read. I want to do this article, see how disorganized I am. Okay, so I have this article open. I'm just going to open it to read what it says. No, this isn't the right one. God damn it, I'm so disorganized. It's around here somewhere. Hold on 1 second. Here it is. Cool. So let's see. Entertainment Weekly reports that there are 3 series in development, and according to the Hollywood Reporter, one of them might bring longtime Star Trek actor Patrick Stewart back into the fold. The new deal comes as ramblings about another Star Trek series featuring Patrick Stewart reprising his role as Star Trek The Next Generation's Captain Picard has been heating up. They spelled Picard wrong, by the way. They put a K in there. There's no K, it's just a C. But anyway, elsewhere, Variety indicates that another of the new series could be one created by Marvel's Runaways showrunners Stephanie Savage and Josh Schwartz that takes place at Starfleet Academy. And also I heard elsewhere that another idea they're banding about is doing a show or series about Khan, all about the history of Khan and eugenics war and whatnot. And there's also mention of an animated series. They said they might do miniseries, they might do a movie special, they might do animated series. So it's not just full-on shows. So they're talking about Star Warsing this shit out and just branching off and doing all sorts of TV stuff with the Star Trek universe. Let's see. Okay, I think I'm done with that article. 1 second. Right, get rid of that. Okay, there we go. So, how do I feel about this? How do you feel? How does everyone feel? I've heard a lot of sort of negative stuff. A lot of people are going, "Oh, we're really franchise fatigue." But here, yeah, Don Willie in the chat saying, "Khan, do we need another show about Khan?" I don't think so, personally. I think I'm sick of Khan, to be frank. Although I'm actually working on my review of Into Darkness, which I just watched last night, and I'll put out my review hopefully later today. I actually like that film. I know a lot of Trekkers didn't like it. I did. I'll get into that later. But anyway, even regardless of that, I think we got too much of Khan. I think, okay, leave it alone. That being said, like, it might be interesting to explore like the whole eugenics war time period in the background and stuff like that. But again, that's kind of, I don't know. I see that kind of akin to exploring Robert's Rebellion, that we already know a lot about it. I mean, do we really need to see more? So that in particular, I'm not thrilled about. I'm also not thrilled about a Starfleet Academy show, to be honest. A lot of the episodes that focus more on Starfleet Academy, like the First Duty Next Generation episode with Wesley, and the Daredevil stunt that went wrong, or the Deep Space Nine episode with Red Squad. I think it was called the Valiant, where Nog and Jake went on board the Valiant, where there was a bunch of cadets from an elite squad of Starfleet Academy called Red Squad. I don't like those episodes. And whenever the Star Trek focuses more on the Starfleet Academy, I actually find it a bit boring. And don't get me started on 2009. I already did my rant for that last week, so I'm not going to touch that one. But suffice to say, I'm not excited about this particular a Starfleet Academy show. It's apparently, but it's done by showrunners who are known for doing a lot of teenage-centric shows, or shows that are about teenagers and geared towards teenagers. So maybe we'll have that new spin on it. And if it's, the thing with any of these ideas, like any idea in general, is that it could be good or could be bad depending on how they do it. So it's hard to say. I can't really say I hate this idea or love this idea outright, but I have certain leanings. And with the Starfleet Academy, my leaning is not very thrilled about that. But bringing back Patrick Stewart as Picard, hopefully I spell his name right, is, of course, amazing. I'm like, that's an idea I am really excited about. Now, whether that means it will be like a Next Generation spinoff, or we'll get more Next Generation characters or anything like that, just any follow, maybe it would be a follow-up to Next Generation, you would think, because Patrick Stewart is obviously older than he was. It wouldn't really make sense to try to have him down at the same age or younger, because unless they use CGI to make him look younger, which would be dumb. So you think it might take, follow along the Next Generation timeline. In that case, I think it would be awesome. Although they could do like a parallel universe Kelvin timeline bullshit, which would infuriate me beyond belief, but hopefully that's not the case. You would think they would just recast Picard if that was the case. But actually getting Patrick Stewart back, I'm all on board with that. Now, at this stage, we don't know that for sure. It's just rumors. It might be not true at all. It could have been some reporter who went up to Patrick Stewart and was like, "Hey, we heard these new Star Trek spinoffs that they asked you to be in it. Would you?" And he was like, "Yeah, of course I would." And so they interpreted that, "Hey, they're doing Patrick Stewart," which, maybe that's not the case. Maybe it is. I don't know. But I would be really excited for doing a Picard-centered thing. The Khan thing, not so much, and definitely not Starfleet Academy. I've never been a fan. To be honest, let's see here. What do you think about the GOT spinoff? Well, you have to go back and watch the first part of my video, because I already talked about that. You're late to the game. Sorry about that. Summarize, I'm really much looking forward to it, more so than season 8 of Game of Thrones, and that's all I'll say. Otherwise, you have to go back and watch it. Don Willie says, "I don't want to wait for the Academy to be over." Anyway, yes, I had to sing that for you. So what else do we have here? So doing an animated show series and spinoffs and like TV movies or miniseries, I actually like this idea. I know some people might think this would induce franchise fatigue, and maybe it will, especially if they're not good. But as I said, like, it's hard for me to judge an idea off an idea, because there was Star Trek 2009. I just talked about this in the review I did last week. When I first heard of the idea, when I heard the news, hey, J.J. Abrams is doing a new Star Trek series that we're showing Kirk and Spock when they're younger, I thought that was a great idea. And I liked it. And I was like, I'm really excited for it. And it turned out to be a giant piece of shit that I hated. and when Discovery first dropped the news, we're doing a new Star Trek show with the same team that did these Star Trek reboots, and it's going to be like set 10 years before the original series. I was dubious. I was like, this might suck. It might not be very good. And it turned out, well, I don't think it's awesome. I did enjoy it overall and would say it has a lot of potential to get better if they do the right thing. So, and knowing about something was in really early production, just an idea, it doesn't really tell you whether or not it's going to be good. And for me personally, like, I don't like to prejudge things to say, oh, this idea is definitely is or is not going to be good. I can say my excitement level, how interested I am for it, but I always like to judge the shows and movies on their own merits. So I won't be able to tell you if it's any good or not until I actually see it, which I thought a lot of people were prejudging Discovery and saying it sucks even before release. So when it was released, they just had their prejudgment confirmed, not just with Discovery, with a lot of other things. And I don't like to do that personally myself. Like, maybe it's ironic because I was just talking about how I don't think season 8 will be good. But that being said, it's not going to be like, I'm going in convinced season 8 is going to suck, so it's going to suck for me regardless, which isn't true. It's actually, they could surprise me and be great, and I'm actually pulling for that to happen. Anyway, what else is going on? So the fact of them like doing all these different, now people brought up like the 90s and said, oh, the 90s had a lot of Star Trek shows going at the same time too, but there were only ever 2 shows going at the same time, although there were the Next Generation films. So you had the Next Generation films and you had 2 shows going. So you had Next Generation Deep Space Nine, but the Next Generation finished, then you had Voyager and Deep Space Nine, and then some of the Next Generation films. So they considered that as saturation. This sounds actually a lot more saturated. If they're doing Discovery and possibly 2 other shows, and then also miniseries and also animated series, and also there's been, even though this is a totally different branch because this is CBS, but in the Star Trek films are owned by Paramount, they're going to be doing Star Trek films. They've already confirmed that 2 Star Trek films are in production. They're doing the next in the reboot series, which is supposed to feature Chris Hemsworth, which I'm really hoping erases the Kelvin timeline. We'll see. And because that whole timeline is bullshit. But anyway, and they're also doing a Quentin Tarantino. He had an idea for a Star Trek film. And to be frank, out of everything I talked about today, that, in fact, not just everything I talked about today, but any upcoming possible movie, TV show, whatever, the Star Trek Quentin Tarantino thing is what I am most excited about, hands down, because Tarantino is an amazing director. I know a lot of these Trekkies are like, oh, he's going to bring violence and make it like a gangster film. I was like, that really irritates me. Tarantino is an awesome director. He does dialogue good. He does, and he does a lot of different genres, and he's able to tailor his material to fit into that genre. So if he does a Star Trek film, I have no doubt that it will, at least in part, feel like a Star Trek film, although it will have his spin on it. But regardless of it, even if it doesn't feel like a true Star Trek film, it's Tarantino. And just the fact that he's so interested and he wants to do a Star Trek film, that, by the way, is inspired by Yesterday's Enterprise, one of the best episodes of the entire Star Trek franchise. I am totally on board, and I trust him because he's a master. The fact that a master filmmaker who's so good at making films wants to do a Star Trek film, that is the one thing I'm just so looking forward to. Like, if you're going to tell me that I have a terminal disease or the world's coming to an end or something, I was just like, please let it not happen before this Tarantino Star Trek film comes out, because I just so want to see it. So badly want to see it. Iron Throne says they look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe success and they want some of that. Yeah, and frankly, that is very true with a lot of franchises. Anything that has a franchise and established name, Star Wars, DC Comics, they tried it with the fucking old monster movies. That didn't work out so well. So yeah, it's become a trend, unfortunately, and it kind of makes sense from a business standpoint, because Marvel had made shit tons of money. That other things like, oh, let's try this with other franchises as well. And so, I mean, on the face of it, I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think like, oh, we're going to be oversaturated with too much Star Trek. Because some people are saying that's why Star Trek died in the early 2000s, because we were saturated with too much Star Trek and people got Star Trek franchise fatigue. But I actually don't agree with that. I think it had a lot more to do with the quality of what they were putting out. That if they were putting out high quality shows, then there wouldn't be franchise fatigue. The reason there was franchise fatigue is because there was fatigue in the writing room. There was fatigue in the material that they were putting out. It seemed bland, like Enterprise, Insurrection, the last 3 years of Voyager. I like Nemesis, though, but a lot of people didn't, apparently. And that's why the Star Trek franchise died in the 2000s, not because there was too much of it, because it was uninspiring. So that's the same thing here. If they put out a bunch of uninspired, bland shows that are, I would say, of the same quality of season 1 of Discovery or less, then yes, it's not going to be successful. People are going to have franchise fatigue. They're not going to be interested, and the numbers for all these things are going to drop. But it sounds like they're putting a lot of creative minds who have their own visions in charge of these projects, and they do that, and they give a love and attention that these projects deserve, and they give something for everyone. They say, hey, let's do Khan for the original Star Trek fans who want to know more about Khan. Let's do Starfleet Academy to appeal to the younger demographics. Let's do Picard show to appeal to the Next Generation fans. That sounds actually like a very solid plan. If they diversify, and because what I was worried about is that they said this, thing with Discovery, that seems to be writing the boot tails of the reboot films. And if they did a whole bunch of shows that were just like that, let's be like the reboot films instead of during this, the time period of the original Star Trek, but have it all look all cool like the reboots, then that would be uninteresting to me. That would seem like, okay, that's going to fail. That's not a good idea. But that doesn't seem to be what they're doing. It seems to be they are diversifying and trying a bunch of different things that will appeal to different people. And I think that is absolutely the way to go. That is 100% the way to go. So I don't necessarily think that we're going to have franchise fatigue, because here's the thing, and that's, someone brought up the Marvel Universe earlier. Nobody has franchise fatigue. Well, not nobody, but most people don't have franchise fatigue when it comes to Marvel Cinematic Universe, because they continually put out quality films, even though like they have like 3 films a year. So now we're oversaturated with like almost 20 Marvel Universe movies, and they're just going to keep coming, and eventually we'll have like 50 of them. But nobody at least at this stage is feeling that franchise fatigue, because it continues to be good. And I think that is the main point. It doesn't matter how much you put into it, it matters the quality of it. Now, you can also compare it to Star Wars, which doesn't have nearly as much as the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but people are that is falling apart, because a lot of their projects had a lot of issues. There's directors being fired, a lot of stuff going behind the scenes. Last Jedi, even though I liked it, I have to admit it was very divisive amongst fans. It wasn't what the fan base wanted, so it was one of the most polarizing films ever. So that's why the Star Wars franchise is not faring so well. It's not an inherent problem with doing expanded universe or doing a franchise, and I'm not even getting to the freaking crap fest that is DC. So you would think it is an inherent problem, but it's not. And plus, I think comparing this, like what Kurtzman is doing with CBS, is a bit different than the cinematic universe, because it's TV shows. So there's more to do with, like, as I said, it's more akin to what they did with the Star Trek franchise in the 90s, which I think was when Star Trek was at its best. If you watch my video, I talked about the 90s. That's for me, that is where my heart is. Not the 60s, not the original series, or not the films in the 80s, but the 90s, the Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager. That's where I think the Star Trek really gelled. So if they go back to that kind of feel, then I would love it. So it all depends. This is a really long-winded way of saying that the idea itself is not flawed, but it all depends on what they do with it. Let me check to see what the cat. Yes. Jesse points out that Kurtzman made The Mummy. Yes, he did. He was also a scriptwriter for Transformers 2, Revenge of the Fallen. He's also a scriptwriter for The Amazing Spider-Man 2. So he doesn't have a very good track record. And, you know, a lot of people don't like Into Darkness, which he wrote. But as I said, and I'll cover later today, I actually did like Into Darkness. But anyway, regardless of that, yeah. So it's funny because The Mummy and Amazing Spider-Man 2 are both examples of a film that was supposed to start off an expanded universe. Like The Mummy was supposed to start off the Dark Universe. They even had in the title, The Dark Universe was supposed to be this expanded Universal monster thing. And that movie flopped, so the whole universe was dead on arrival, which to me, that was... I don't blame Kurtzman as much, even though I never saw that film because I'm sure it sucked and Kurtzman directed it. so I'm not saying he's completely blameless in that, but I don't think he was the main issue. I think the main issue was the studio pushing forward. That's not how you do expanding. They want to copy Marvel so badly, and DC had the same issue, is that they want to push it as a universe. But what they need to do, what Marvel did, is first they put out a couple good movies, and then they build the universe. Like in the second movie, they started laying the groundwork to build the universe, but they just didn't like throw it all out and have a title saying Marvel Cinematic Universe at the start of the film like they did with Dark Universe, which is dumb. So that was a problem both this Dark Universe and DC thing had, is that they immediately went to pushing it out. And if you would compare it to the Star Trek thing that's going on, they actually did do more like the Marvel model. They put out Discovery first, see how it went, even though I know there was a lot of hate going for it online. Apparently the numbers were good, and that's what the only thing that studios care about. The numbers were good. It got a lot of viewership, got them people to subscribe to their subscription service, so that's all they care about. So they see this as a success. And so now they're going to put out more of the universe, which I think is the correct model. First, you put it, and hopefully they'll go about this in a slow way. They'll start with like one show and not drop them all at once and see, is this working or is this not working? And before they move on to the next one. Let's see. Iron Trent says it's probably going to take 1.5 to 2 years per season. Yeah, probably. Let's see. Don Willie says they should really stop going back to the past and move forward. And yes, I do agree with that. But if they're doing this thing with Picard, then perhaps they will be moving forward, as I mentioned earlier. Iron Trent says they can use the miniseries format as a backdoor pilot for future TV series, like RDM's BSG did. Ronald D. Moore's Battlestar Galactica did. Yes. Absolutely, that is the good point. They could use that, and so yeah. So I think I'm actually done talking about this. I'm going to get back to making my Star Trek Into Darkness review. But thank you guys so much for watching this. I just thought I'd blabber on about this breaking news and my 2 cents. And my ultimate thing is, I'll see when I see. We'll judge it when it comes out, not beforehand. But I am somewhat excited. I do like the prospect of there being more Star Trek. More Star Trek is good Star Trek in my mind, although unless it sucks, but we'll see. But I wanted to get back to the thing in the 90s where there was all these Star Trek things. If we get back to that thing, I actually would enjoy that. But it depends on how good it is, so we'll just have to see. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, tuning into this impromptu video. We'll see you guys next time.